Hi, I'm Mike from Comprehensive Grants Management. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about planning for future funding opportunities for public housing authorities. And for planning purposes, to plan for these future projects, we'll draw a little bit from the future with HUD's budget information that they publish, or forecasted budget information, and we'll draw a little bit from the past, which is their past programs and when they were released in the year and how they were released. The budget in brief is released every year, and while this does not specify exactly which programs are going to be released when and how much they will be funded, it does give you an overarching umbrella type view of which offices are going to be receiving funding and how it compares to last year. For example, we can look at the Office of Public and Indian Housing, which is responsible for funding capital improvement grant programs such as the ESSG, Emergency Safety and Security Grant, as well as housing-related hazards capital fund grants and lead-based paint capital fund grants. This office also funds self-sufficiency programs such as the Ross Service Coordinator, FSS, and Jobs Plus. So between 2022 and 2023, they are releasing a very increased budget of over $6 billion. So we can assume that these major programs are not only going to remain, but they may even increase in funding. That can manifest itself either through larger potential award amounts, or they're just going to increase the availability to more applicants. So for planning purposes, you may want to anticipate when these programs will be released. For this, we can only really draw on the past information when these programs were released historically. Things like the ESSG was released in 2022. I believe it was released in May or March of 2022 with a due date in June of 2022. So this is something we would expect to happen very soon. The Housing Related Hazards Grant is actually currently ongoing. So these capital fund programs typically are released a little earlier in the queue. Later into the summer is when we would tend to anticipate seeing the self-sufficiency programs such as the Ross, FSS, and Jobs Plus. In 2022, the Ross and Jobs Plus were both released in May of 2022 with a due date in late July, and the FSS was released in August with a due date into October. So these self-sufficiency programs, HUD will typically release them later into the summer. For fun, the Comprehensive Grants Management also likes to work with the Youth Build, which is from the Department of Labor. This also does tend to happen later into the year, fall, and sometimes with a due date into the next following year, which would be 2024. Now, these time frames are only for planning purposes, and they could very well be bumped to the left or to the right based on the next year. And should the federal government encounter something they don't expect, such as a worldwide global pandemic, those things can knock this funding schedule off. But in most cases, we do tend to notice the federal government's habits and their timelines, and we do plan a little bit based on that information. So with the information of when these grants are released, what can you do with that? This is when you can use this time to start working on developing the partnerships that you may need for supportive services programs. Or if you have capital needs that you may want to have looked at, you can use this time for having assessments or reviews done on these. When these grants are actually released, you'll have about generally 2 months from start to finish to get everything in line and get your submission submitted in a timely fashion. So you don't want partnerships or assessments or things that take time, you don't want them to eat into your application process. So you can use this time to take care of these tasks. And in the back of your mind, you can forecast it for these programs that you want to take aim at in the future when they are released. Thank you, and I hope this clarifies on how you can use this information to develop a loose schedule or how you approach these grants.